This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, great. So what we were discussing yesterday is that we started out with a service called as a storage account. And we are telling or we are talking right now that a storage account is a service which is especially used to handle data that is what unstructured in nature, right? And we further went ahead and discussed what is a structured and an unstructured data. And we also said that a structured data is also something known as a relational data. Unstructured is something which cannot be related to each other. And a service that is used to store all this unstructured data, like audio files, video files, documents, and everything, is a storage account. And while creating a storage account, we said there is something known as, let's say, the name of the storage account, the naming convention of the storage account. So, guys, can anyone tell me what is the naming convention of the storage account or of service in Azure? Can anyone tell me what is the naming convention that needs to be followed? Cannot contain any special characters, no capital letters, 3 to maximum 24, no special characters, and the name should be unique. Right? These are the three things that I'll need to consider before going ahead and creating, let's say, any of the service. And one question, guys, is that after creating the name of the storage account, can I change the name of the storage account? I cannot. Can I change the location? Cannot. Also, we also discussed something about the performance types. Something known as a standard storage account and a premium storage account. We said a standard storage account comes with something known as a hard drive, where a premium storage account comes with something known as a solid state drive. So the performance is better. And we also said, or we also spoke about something known as replication tiers, which is very important. And we had multiple replication tiers like LRS, which is locally redundant storage, GRS, geo redundant, ZRS, zone redundant, GZRS, and RAGRS is what we talked about. And we said what are the different replication tiers out here and what are the number of copies that you are going to get in each and every replication. And we said which is better, what is the SLA, and etc. And we also discussed about what is the pricing structure when you go for an LRS versus GRS versus ZRS versus RAGRS, and etc. And we also saw that how can you optimize the cost, meaning there is something known as an access tier, something called as a hot access tier, and something known as a cool access tier. Hot access tier is for the data that is very frequently accessed. Cool access tier is the data that is not frequently touched, like 5 years old transaction or 10 years old transaction. Cool access tier is for that particular data which is touched every day, which is like 1 month transactions or daily transactions and extra. All these reports is something that you place in something known as hot access tiers, right? Now let's discuss further going into it, going into the service of a storage account and saying how do you store the data? Like if I have, let's say, multiple amount of data, how do you store the data? How do you upload the data from your local system into the cloud? And how do you access the data? This is going to be the agenda what we are going to look at today. Okay. So let's do one thing. I do not have any resource groups as at this point. So let me go ahead and create a resource group. So I'll say create and I'll say it is storage RG. So something like storage resource group out here and a location like East US 2. Tags optional. I can give, I cannot give. That is an optional parameter. There is no mandate here. It's a review and create. And I am going ahead and creating the service out. So this the resource group is created. Now what I am doing right now is that I'm going inside the resource group and from here I'm saying create. I'm saying create and here what I'm doing is that I'm just typing a name called storage account and it's taking me to a service called as a storage account and I'll say create. So create, so it's asking me firstly what is the subscription. I'm selecting the subscription. Secondly, the resource group, I'm giving the name of the, I'm giving the name of the resource group out here. Third, it's asking for the storage account name. So in the same way that we did yesterday, a project name, the name of the service, and the region in which we are creating this. So our project name was healthcare. STOR stands for the storage account service, and US East 2 is the location. And now it's telling the name is already taken. So let's do US East 3, something which is unique. That's it. Something which I want basically to be unique out here. And here I'll just say it is US East 2, the location being US East 2 out here. Performance tier being standard. And since I'm just testing it out, right? I'm putting it in something known as LRS, locally redundant storage. I don't want to go for a higher tier out here. Advanced, we do not even touch anything about this. Let's come down and I'll say hot because it's a frequently accessed data. So I have a very small amount of data that I'll upload and this is being frequently accessed. So it's a hot tier. I'll say networking, public endpoints, all networks. I am not selecting any different option out here. Data protection, again, we said soft delete is like if you delete a file or something known as a blob in Azure, you can go ahead and get it restored for what? 7 days. So retention period is what something that I'm setting out here. Finally, review and create. So I'm not even going to tags because I don't want to tag this resource. I'm saying review and create and I'm getting this created. So as and when I did a create, there is a notification telling me that the deployment is getting initialized and it's telling I'm submitting the deployment right now. And after this is done, it will go ahead and create something known as a storage account for me right now. Okay, any questions till here, guys? Anything till here? So this is going to take about a minute or two to go ahead and create something known as a service known as a storage account for me. And as it's, I mean, this is what we did yesterday, right? We said, okay, fine, these are the number of options that we have. We can go ahead and select them. And once you decide what is the location, what is the replication that you want to create and etc., you can go ahead and let's say create your storage accounts. Now, something that you cannot change is let's say the location of the storage account, the name of the storage account, the performance type of the storage account. I cannot move my storage account from standard to premium, from premium to standard, and etc. But something that you can change is the replication options. You can change your replication from LRS to ZRS or ZRS to GRS, the other way around also. Depending upon what you want to achieve, you can have the replication changed at any point in time. So the storage account is now created. It says, okay, fine, the deployment is succeeded, the storage account is created, and etc. What I'll do is that I'll come here and hit the button known as go to resource. So this is how a storage account really looks like. And right now, in the left hand side of my screen, right, you see a couple of options like overview, activity log, and etc. All these are known as blades, BLADES, blades in Azure. Nothing but what we call options, Azure calls it as blades. Right, so these options out here in the left hand side of your screen will help you interact with the storage account that you just created. It's nothing but interaction with the storage account out here. And the first blade that we are here is something known as overview. In the overview section, it's just going to give you a summary of information on where your storage account is created, what is the performance tier of your storage account, what is the replication of your storage account, what is the name of the storage account, and etc. For example, it's telling me that the resource group name is storage RG, location is ECS2, subscription name is pay as you go, subscription ID something like this, and it's also telling me the performance tier is standard and the access tier is what? Hot. And it's also telling me the replication here is LRS storage V2, and it's telling the provisioning state is succeeded. And it's also giving me the time where when I created this particular storage service. Right, this is all the information what it's giving me in the overview page. But very importantly, now I now basically say that okay, fine, I now want to store data inside it. Now, how do I store the data inside it? Is that there are different options to store the data within a storage account, depending upon, again, if it's an unstructured data, depending upon what kind of data that you're trying to store out here, or how do you want to store out here, you have different options out here. What are those different options? Is this something you see known as storage or data storage options out here, right? So you have multiple data storage options starting with containers, which is the very popular option when you go for a storage account. So you have containers, file shares, queues, and tables. Now, queues and tables is something that we're not going to see because this is a very, very rarely used service, not a very heavily used service. But containers and something known as file shares. These are the two options that we are actually going to see now. Okay. So let's understand what a container really is. Now, imagine that storage account is a drive in your computer, like you have D drive, E drive, and etc. Now, if you want to save files, right, you'll create what folders. Containers are like folders. Containers are like folders of a storage account in here. So what I'll do, or how will I create a container right now, is a very simple way. Okay. So how do I create a container is in a very simple way. I'll come down to the data storage option here. I'll click on containers. As and when I click on container, I have an option to what? Add a container, right? I'll say add a container. And it's now asking me what is the name of the container. Okay. I'll say it is a test container. And very importantly, please notice this, guys. It's asking me what is the public access level of this particular container. And it has an option called private, no anonymous access. We'll see what this is. For now, I am selecting this as private, no anonymous access. Whatever Azure is giving me, I'm just selecting this out. I'm saying, okay, fine, great. I am good with this option. Let me go ahead and create this container. And now I have a test container. So it took a second for me to create a container. It's just like creating a folder out here. So what I'll do right now is that I will now go inside this container. I'm inside the container right now. And now I'll say upload. Do you see an option called upload out here? I'll say upload. So very simple. I'll just click on this folder option in the extreme right. And now it's going to ask me what do you want to upload. So I have a couple of sample images out here in my computer. I'll just take not one but multiple. So I can select multiple images at one go. I can say open. As in when I did an open, it says okay fine. Do you want to upload this out? I'll say yes, I want to upload this out. And it will take like a minute or so to go ahead and upload all these files inside the container. So right now I have multiple files that are uploaded inside the container right now. So all these files were uploaded. So what did I do? I had a storage account service. I firstly went ahead and created something known as a container. And inside that container, I went inside it. I said upload. And I then went ahead and uploaded all these things out. Now let's imagine that you are a business right now. And all this is business data. You want to share this data with someone. Okay, with let's say an employee of yours over the internet. Because it's a business data and I just want them to, just take a link and download this data. Can they do it? Yes, they can do it. How can they do it? Is for example, if I click on, let's say the sample image one, let's say the sample image one is something that I want to share with someone. Okay. If I click on this, it has different properties like overview, versions, and etc. And under the overview, I am just looking at one particular property known as U. Okay, just give me 1 second, guys. Just give me one quick second out here, guys. Okay, sorry for the disturbance again. So is everyone able to see the screen, guys? Like, is it visible or is the font okay for everyone offline?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
okay, great. Fine. So this is where we are. So I've uploaded the file inside the container. I'm here. I just clicked on the file out here. Or now I will not call it as a file anymore. Rather, the technical term for this is known as a blob, right? That's what we discuss is that this is blob and that's the reason this is popularly known as a blob storage account. Okay, so the technical term for this is known as a blob. And what I'm doing is that I'm just clicking on a blob out here. Okay, and as and when I click on a blob, it gives me multiple options like, what, do you want to download it or do you want to delete it or everything. In here, now the requirement for me right now or for my business right now is that I have a user. I'm sitting in India. I have another user sitting in the US. I want to just share this data to that particular user over the internet. Okay, this particular file over the internet. So what this is doing is that now it's generating something known as a URL, unique resource link, like nothing but a link out here. Like you have google.com, we have a URL for the storage account also. Right? So I'll just click on this, I'll just copy this, and I'll open my notepad firstly to understand how this looks like. Okay, so this is how my URL is now looking at. Like, okay, now can anyone identify what this is? Healthcare storage, the name of the storage account. So my URL is constructed in such a way that it is HTTPS, meaning accessible over the internet, meaning hypertext transfer protocol secure, meaning it is securely accessible over the internet. If you have an internet, you can click on this link, and then it's telling // healthcare store usc3 dot blob dot core dot windows dot net. This entire thing is known as fully qualified domain name of the storage account, FQDN, meaning nothing but if you do a Google, right, it's not just Google, it's google.com. In the same way, Microsoft has the naming convention for this as something dot blob dot core dot windows dot net, where blob is the name of the service. Blob is nothing but file here, right? Dot core dot windows dot net is the extension of it. And then it's doing a // and can you tell me what this is, guys? The name of the container. So it's now doing a / the name of the container, then doing a / sample1.jpg, the name of the file that I'm trying to access, right? So what if I now just copy this link, and since it's over the internet, I just place it here. I'll just say enter. Now I am getting an error message, or I'm getting rather a message out here telling that the XML file does not have to be in a style and all that stuff. Now, can anyone tell me why I'm getting this error? So there is an error detail telling that the resource is not found. The specified resource does not exist. Request ID is something like this. Private. Meaning when we created a container, if I go back to the container right now, the access level of the container is private. Meaning no one just cannot come here and access your data. Just like that. They cannot come here and access your data like that. Because your container right now is sitting in an access level known as private. So what are the different access levels that I do have? And the question here is that, can I change the access level of a container after I create it? Okay, so any answers here, guys? Can I change the access level of a container after I create it? Yes, no, maybe? Anyone?
Yes, yes, we can change.
Okay, you can definitely change it, yes. So how can I change it? I'll just click on this container and I have an option called change access level. So I'll just click on this, and right now it's on what? Private. And in brackets, it's telling no anonymous access. Anonymous meaning someone who you do not identify, an anonymous person whom you do not identify cannot go ahead and access this out. But if I click on this drop down, there are also two different kind of access levels called blob and container. So it's telling blob will give you anonymous read access for blobs only. Container will give you anonymous read access for the containers and the blobs. So let's understand what this really is. What I'll do is that I'll put it on something known as container right now. The access level as in when I put it on container. Now there is a warning message telling that all container and the blob data can be read through anonymous requests. Clients can enumerate blobs within it and everything. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, fine. I've changed the access level. Let me say okay. And now I'll again come back here to the URL that I already have opened. I'll just say enter again. Now I'm able to get an image. Now this is the image that I went ahead and uploaded into the container, or this is the blob that I went ahead and uploaded into the container. What if I change the name of the blob here? I'm again getting an image because I have all this data that is present inside the container. Sample 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and etc. Meaning now anyone sitting in any part of the world, any corner of the world, using this particular link, they'll be able to download this image, or they'll be able to see this image or see the file what is there inside it. Let's imagine this is not an image but an actual PDF file that consists of a lot of data. They'll be able to download that particular data using this particular link. The only condition they need is that they need to have an internet connection. That's it. And if I provide this link, they'll be able to download this out. So why they are able to download this out? Because I have now changed the access level of the particular container to something known as a container access level. So container and blob access levels. For example, if I come down here, a container and a blob access level will allow you to will allow you to read the data, download the data over the internet as an anonymous user, meaning the user just needs to have this particular link. That's it. The user just needs to have this particular link. But as a business, now this is a security concern for me, right? Because I cannot let just anyone just come here and download this particular blob and basically use it for their own advantage. I cannot let do that because that will be a security concern for me. Imagine if you're a bank, you're sharing this data over the internet, and this link basically goes to someone's hand. They'll be easily going ahead and downloading this out, right? They'll be easily be able to do that. So my organization tells me not to do this. My organization tells me that, you know what, under no circumstances can the public access level of the particular container be on a blob or a container level. I do not want to do that. It should only be private. It cannot be blob or a container, because if it's blob or a container, people can easily access your data. But the reason I'm on the cloud is for security. One of the biggest reasons what we discussed about yesterday, right? So I'll switch it back to private. But as and when I switch it back to private, right, I again have an issue that I'm not able to share this data. I'm again having this particular issue, which brings me back to the again, the business problem of number one, that how do I share this data then? Now, private is telling that in bracket, it is telling no anonymous access, meaning someone you don't know cannot access this out. But what if I tell, okay, fine, someone whom I know? How do I tell someone whom I know? Is that very simple? Let's say if I want to share an image out here, if I click on this image, after overview out here, right, there is version, snapshots, edit. There is in the last something known as generate SAS. SAS stands for shared access signature. Very, very, very important. From an interview perspective, this is one of the most asked questions. Is that what do you know about shared access signature? And this is probably something that you'll be using a lot. So what exactly shared access signature is that if I click on this something known as generate SAS, it's now telling, okay, fine, you know what? A shared access URI grants access to the restricted blob, Azure blob, and etc. What exactly this does is that very simple. It says, okay, fine, please generate something known as a key for your blob, meaning your blob in a container is logged. This is known as encryption. Whenever you upload a blob inside a container, Microsoft Azure in the backend will go ahead and encrypt the blob. This is also called encryption at rest. So when your data is at rest, meaning your data is sitting idle, Microsoft Azure is going to go ahead and lock all your data so that no one can go ahead and access it just like that. In order to unlock it, you need a key, right? That's what you are generating out here inside something known as shared access signature. And in this key, I can now control what someone can do with this key. For example, I am saying please generate something known as a key 1, and please allow a user to read, add, delete, write. I have a list of things out here. I can only say please allow a user to read, but not do anything else apart from read. He just has to read that particular blob, not write, delete, and etc. And I can also set, the best advantage of this is that I can also set a start time and an end time, telling that this key is only valid for about, let's say, 7 hours or 8 hours. And most importantly, I can, let's say, I only want to share this with only one user. Let's say I know that user. I can take his IP address. I can say, okay, fine. Please give me what is the IP address that you are working from. Because every computer, anything, any machine that you're working from, right, will have something known as an IP address. I can ask that IP address and I can specifically tell, please allow this address or please allow the access to this particular blob only from that particular IP address. As of now, I am not giving the IP address and I'm saying, okay, fine, HTTPS only, and I'll say generate SAS token and URL. As and when I do it, I have something known as an SAS token and something known as an SAS URL. So let's take the SAS URL. Let's take this particular SAS URL out here, copy it, and just come down here, and just reconstruct this URL and just paste the URL here. A very lengthy string, but do you all see, guys? Everything until this point is the same here, right? Is the same as the above. After that, you have a question mark. Question mark is nothing but adding two strings. In, let's say, in an internet language, if I put a question mark, right, it's nothing but addition. And now it's telling, okay, fine, SP, meaning the permissions that you have are read, and saying and st, start time. So I'm just explaining what the string really is. It's telling start time is something like 2021, something like this. Z meaning Zulu, meaning UTC time. This is in something known as UTC time, meaning if you want to actually see what this time is in Indian Standard Time, you'll have to do a plus 5.5 hours to this. Okay. And then it's telling end time, and then it's giving me an entire key. Why is it giving me a key? Because my data right now is in an encrypted state. To unlock that data and to see that data securely, it has generated something known as a key out here. So what if I completely take this URL? Let's copy this out. Now my container still is in what? Private access level. I haven't changed this to container or a blob access level. It's still in a private access level. I'll just say, okay, fine. Is this entire URL out here? Now I'm able to load the data. And most importantly, I'm able to load the data securely. This is not something that I'm just doing unsecurely, right? Because I, as a user, went ahead and generated this particular token or this particular key, and I said this key is only valid for so many hours, and I said the key is only valid for one particular user from one particular IP address. Now, if let's say someone else tries to use this, they will not be able to download or they will not be able to see this data. Reason being, I have put an IP restriction on top of it, right? I put something known as an IP restriction on top of it. So this is how you securely go ahead and share or transfer the data from within, let's say, an Azure storage container. Okay, this is one of the options to go ahead and, let's say, share one individual data. Let's say I have like 10 files. So I can generate 10 SAS tokens and I can just give the user 10 SAS tokens out here. Let's say this is not the scenario. Let's say they are not just 10 files or 10 blobs out here. Let's say there are hundred thousands of, thousands of files out here. Then how do I then share this? Then how do I basically ask the user to go ahead and, access this data out here? For which, let's come back one quick second out here. Let's go into the storage account. So I have come back to the storage account. I'm not inside the container. And at the storage account level as well, I have two different options. access keys, and shared access signature again. Now, the difference between generating a shared access signature at the storage account level versus at the blob level is that if I generate a shared access signature at the storage account level, the person who has the shared access signature will be able to see all the containers inside my storage account. Okay. So let's say you have 10,000 containers inside a storage account. If you generate a shared access signature here, they'll be able to see all the containers listed under it. There is also an option to go ahead and generate a shared access signature, not at the blob level, but at the container level, shared access tokens. If I generate it here, the person who will have this link will only have access to the test container and all the blobs under this particular test container. And thirdly, there is an option to generate the shared access signature at an individual blob level. This comes into picture when you want to share data over the internet, just like we were doing it right now. So if you generate an SAS token here, the person who is accessing this particular data will only have access to this particular blob out here, which is sample-1.jpg. So it depends upon where you are generating the shared access signature. Let's say there are like many developers in my team and I'm a DevOps engineer, and that developers in my team wants to go ahead and access all the data, all the containers inside this particular storage account. So what I can do is that I have two options out here: access keys and shared access signatures. Two options. Let's see firstly what are access keys out here. So as in when I clicked on this, it's telling this is the name of the storage account and etc. And I can say, and I can have an option called show keys. And one thing guys is very importantly that you'll have to understand is that I'm only getting this option called show keys because I am the owner of the subscription, because I have an RBAC called as an owner out here. If I don't have an owner, if I'm a reader, right, I won't be able to see this option, meaning I won't be able to see the keys and all the secure information out here. So what I'll do right now is I'll say, show keys out here. And here I have two things known as a key and a connection string. Two options out here. What I'll do out here is that I'll select the connection string. I'll go again into a notepad, paste this connection string out here. So it's nothing again but a unique string. It says default protocol and all these things out. And it has the account name and everything. Now the question here is that how does someone go ahead and access the storage account using this particular connection string that I just generated? How can someone do that? Is that, let's say a user who wants to access this needs a software known as Microsoft Storage Explorer. Needs a software which is known as Microsoft Storage Explorer, which says that it's a cloud management service and etc. Very, very, very simple software. You can just download it and install it on your laptop just like you do a VLC player. You can just download this out, double click on the installation file and just go ahead and install this out. Okay. After you install it, you will have something called a storage explorer in your laptop, mentioned like this. So it will be an application inside your laptop. After you install it out, you can just open this out, and it's going to take like about a minute or so for the software to open. And as and when this opens, right, you can give the connection string that you just generated inside this storage explorer. So this is a connection string, right, that you have. So this is where I went ahead and I said access keys and I copied the connection string. And now you can copy this connection string and use this connection string along with this particular software. So I'll say close. So how do I connect to it? So this is what I see. Like in the beginning, this is what I see. This is how it looks like. It's asking me to sign in. I don't want to sign into my account. I'll just say remove. I'll just say okay. And now what I'll do is that, do you see this particular plug icon here? You have this option, right? This is known as a connection dialog. So what I'll do is that I'll just click on this connection dialog. And what it'll do right now is that it'll open this particular service. It'll tell you what do you exactly want to connect to. Do you want to connect to a queue, blob, whatever it is? I'll say, you know what, I want to connect to a storage account or a service out here. because this is what I want to go ahead and look into. And I'll select storage account or a service. Now it is asking me, how do you want to connect to? It has three different options here. One being a connection string, two a shared access signature or a URL, three is something known as an account name or a key. Now what I have with me is that I generated something known as what? A connection string. So I'm copying this connection string out here and I'm saying, okay, fine, connection string, I have this. I'll stay next. And it's asking me to enter the connection string. I'll say enter. Now do you see, as and when I entered the connection string, right, it took the name of the storage account automatically. You can change this. I can say access key, just to make sure that I'm connected to this particular storage service using an access key out here. I'll say next. I'll say connect. That's it. This is what I'll do. And in the bottom, it says, okay, fine, successfully added the connection out here. Now, how do I look into the service? Now, do you see these dots out here in the top, the first option? I'll just click on this. And here I have multiple storage accounts. But this is what we have just added, right? This is the service what we just added, which is healthcare hyphen access keys. So let's look into that. I will say, okay, fine, going into the blob containers. Now it says you have blob containers, file shares, tables, and queues. I'll say, okay, fine, I'm interested in something known as a blob container out here. And as and when I do that, I have something called $log and test container out here. Two things. If I click on this right now, something known as a test container, it is showing me all the blobs inside it. Meaning you can give this connection string to anyone sitting in any part of the world, and they'll be able to use this service known as Microsoft Storage Explorer, a very simple software, to go ahead and interact with your storage account without having to log into Azure. So you don't have to give access to everyone on Azure. You don't have to do that. They can use a service known as a connection, a storage account, a storage explorer out here, use something known as a connection string, take that connection string and get connected or basically log into this particular storage account. You don't have to log into Azure. This is the best advantage of it. But the thing right now is that, okay, fine, I've given a user a connection string. It's great. I've given the access key to him. The question now is that as a user using this connection string out here, will I be able to go ahead and delete the files here? Yes, no, maybe. Any answers here?
No.
Option is available out there. Yes, there is an option that is available out there. But can I go ahead and delete it? Let's try that. So let me pick up a file known as file 9 and I'll say delete. It says, are you sure you want to delete? I'll say, yes, I am sure I want to delete this out. And let's give it a second and let's see what happens right now. So it's saying, okay, fine, queued, waiting for deletion and etc. using SAS. It's saying deleting the sample right now. And it said it deleted it out. Meaning it was able to delete this out. But why did this happen? Is because I generated something known as an access key, not a shared access signature, guys. Very important difference between an access key and a shared access signature is that in an access key, if you generate an access key and give it to someone, it's equal to giving an administrative right to them on your storage account. Meaning they can do anything and everything from deleting your containers, the blobs and everything. You can do that using an access key. So access key grants you unlimited privileges on the container or on the storage account wherever you have generated it out. That's the purpose of an access key, meaning we normally don't generate access key like this. We don't do this. We don't do this at all. But let's say you have did it. By mistakenly you did this out. You gave it to a developer into your organization. The developer is able to access these files. Now let's imagine that because of your bad luck or something like that, the developer has left the organization the very next day with the access key that you have given him. Now he doesn't have to be a part of your organization anymore. He just have to download the Microsoft Storage Explorer from any corner of the world and be able to connect to your service, right? See how dangerous this is. Reason being, we don't generate this normally. But just in case you generate it out, and you, let's say you want to change this out, can you change this out? Yes, you can do that by something known as a rotate key option out here. Do you see an option called rotate key? Rotate key will regenerate the key out here, invalidating the earlier one. This is an option used in scenarios where you want to enhance your security. Normally in an organization, irrespective of whether an employee is leaving or not, we rotate the key for every 30 days. For every 30 days, we rotate this key out because we want to make sure that no one is accessing the storage account in an unauthorized way. So you can say rotate this key. It says the current key will be immediately invalid and not recoverable. And I'll say yes. And what happened right now is that it regenerated this particular key. The key entirely got changed. So let's do one thing. Let's come here back again and let's do a refresh out here. And what I'll do right now is again, I'll go into that particular storage account service. I'll go into the healthcare access key. It's still getting reflected out here. I'll go into the service out here. I'll say blob containers. I'm getting an error right now. I got an error immediately telling that, you know what, make sure that the value of the authorization header is formatted correctly, meaning it's just telling you that, you know what, you don't have the proper access out here. I cannot let you do all these things. So let's say I close this out. My file is still open. I just say go ahead and delete this file as well. It says, are you sure you want to delete it? I'll say yes. And here I'm getting an error right now. Do you see this? It's telling deletion of that particular container failed because SAS discovery not completed, meaning I'm not able to see that particular SAS or I'm not able to see that particular connection string out there. Okay, so this is what rotation does here out. Okay, so it invalidates the earlier key and it makes sure that, you know what, no one is like, you know, having an access here. But let's say if I want to securely, you know, have someone to just read my files, not delete it, nothing, do nothing. So the best option out here is not access keys, but a shared access signature that is generated at a storage account level. And in here, it's saying, okay, fine, what do you want to have access to? I'll say, okay, fine. It's just something known as blob. And I'll just select all these things out. And this is important, guys. It's telling what are the permissions that you want to grant to a user who's using this particular connection string. I'll say it's just read. I don't want him to write, don't want him to delete and etc. So no write, no delete, no add, no create. So it's just read and not even this immutable blob. We'll see what immutable storage is again. So read and list. These are the only two permissions that I want him to have, whoever is using it out. And I can come here again, set up a start and an end time, also give the IP address here. So this is a more secure way of sharing things out. I'll say generate the SAS and the connection string out here. And I'll say, okay, fine, this is the blob service URL, or I can say this is the connection string out here. So anything is fine. I'll take the connection string and I'll say again, go back to my storage explorer. I'll say connect. I'll say again storage service. I'll say connection string. Let's put this in. Let's say go back. Let's go to shared access signature URL, or I'll just take the URL right now. So I'm just putting in a URL out here. So I'm not taking a connection string. I just put in a URL out here. And now I'll say this is SAS, not an access key, because I'm now connecting to the storage service using an SAS and not an access key directly. And I'll say next. I'll say connect. And now do you see, right? If I went ahead and connected with a key, I had access to what? Blobs, files, tables, queues, all those services. But here I'm specifically telling that I only need an access to the container. And inside this container, I'm there inside this container right now, and I see a couple of files out here. So what I do is that I get too smart and I'll try to delete this file again. So I'll come here, do a delete. It'll now ask me, do you want to delete? Yes, I'll tell I'll want to delete it thus. And now, do you see it failed to start the delete because of insufficient credentials? Because the essays that you generated did not have the delete permission out there. It only had a read permission out there. So this is how you can control on who has access to what. Okay. And the very big difference between a shared access signature and an access key is that if you generate an access key and provide it to someone, they will have unlimited access to your storage account. They can create, delete, do anything. A shared access signature is much more a secured way of sharing your data, meaning you can control what someone can do, whether they can read, whether they can delete, whether they can add, create, whatever it is. This is the biggest difference between a shared access signature and an access key. And this is one of the most asked interview questions, is that what do you understand by shared access signature and an access key? What do you understand between the difference between those two? What is a secure way? What is a better way, and etc. This is what it is. Okay. Now, one last thing out here is that I went ahead and deleted a file, right, or a blob here. There was a blob called, sample9. I deleted it out. Can I retrieve it right now? I can retrieve it because there was something known as soft delete enabled for 7 days. So I can retrieve it for the last 7 days. So how can I retrieve it? I just go inside the container. So I'm coming into the storage account service. I'm going inside the container out here. And here, right, you're able to see an option called what? Show deleted blobs. I can say show this. And do you see here in the bottom? It says deleted. What I can do out here is that I'll say undelete. There is an option. If I scroll right, there is an option to do what? Undelete this particular blob. I can say, okay, fine, undelete this out. And I'll get this blob once again. And if I see here in my container, if I do a refresh out, I'm again able to see this out. So all about authorization and authentication, meaning how do you share this data? How can someone go ahead and access this data and everything? And how do you undelete this out? Sorry, how to? So what happens? Yeah, what happens is that when you have something known as soft delete option enabled. So what happened is that before I created the storage account, I went ahead and said enable soft delete and I said 7 days. After 7 days, it will automatically get deleted. Mhm. Mhm. So you don't enable a soft delete. So there is an option to enable or disable a soft delete. Option can be used to unselect it off. You can just switch it off. It is configurable. You can take it to 365 maximum. You can do a maximum of 365, but I think there is an also option to go ahead till 720. But something that I'll need to read a bit of. So let's see that also. So mhm. Under what scenario? Very good question. Is that when you generate an access key? Is that, let's say your project manager wants to have an access to it, or let's say a senior manager above you wants to have an access to it, or let's say the client owning this data wants to have an access to it. You can go ahead and say, okay, fine, I don't want to kind of restrict you to only read it. If you want to delete it, it's your data. You can go ahead and delete this out. So if you know that the person that you are giving this key is the owner of that particular service, you can go ahead and generate the access key and share it to them. But if let's say I am sharing it to, let's say, like developers in my team, or let's say to someone in my team who just needs to have a read, that's it, who just needs to see the data, that's when I'll be using something known as a shared access signature. So that's the reason I said that irrespective of whether, let's say, you share the key or not share the key, we rotate it for every 30. For every 30 days, we go ahead and rotate this out. so that to make sure that you regenerate the key every 30 days, because you never know when an employee leaves, right? I do not have a control on that. So that's the reason you do a rotation for 30. Okay, does that answer your question? Any more questions? Yes. It is a manual as of now, but you can write something known as a PowerShell script to automate it out without any human intervention. Yes. For every 30, you can schedule something known as a PowerShell script, which will go ahead and rotate this out for every 30 days. So you have a Microsoft Azure scheduler also. At the same time, you can have an external scheduler also. So you can integrate both of them. So there is something known as automation account in Microsoft Azure, which will help you schedule all these automation things. For the schedule, what you have like every 30 days or every 1 week or something like that, you can go ahead and schedule these things out.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, while we creating storage account, we are giving
One second.
resource groups, right?
Satish, can you just give me 1 second? I was just answering a question in the offline class. Give me 1 second. I'll come back to you.
Oh, okay, fine.
Rotate. Yeah. You can change it. Depends upon the organization policy. Like each and every organization has a security standards that they follow, right? So you can change it to 15 days depending upon what your organization really tells you. Okay. Just I'll take one question from the online class. Yes, Satish, please go ahead.
Sir, while we creating storage account, we are giving resource groups. Yes, sir.
Correct. Correct.
If we are deleting resource group, then what about the storage account? It will there are.
So let's say again, same comparison out there is that you have a folder, you have a file inside that folder. Okay.
Okay, sir.
If you delete the folder, will you also be deleting the file, or will the file just be there? The file will also get deleted, right? If I delete a folder,
Yes,
all the files inside
yes,
the
sir.
folder will get
Fine.
deleted. The resource
Yes,
group
sir.
is like a folder for me right now. If I
Okay,
delete a
fine.
resource group, I'll end up deleting also the storage account inside it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any more questions, guys? Yeah, please go ahead. Hmm. Permissions. Sorry, it be invalid. If you tweak the URL, it'll be invalid. You cannot do that. Like there is some restrictions out there from Microsoft end. So if only you can generate it, or if you only have that generated properly, Microsoft will have you authenticated properly. So if you tweak the URL, it will just throw an error telling that the URL is invalid. Any more questions here, guys? Mhm. So, so blob is like file for me. Like when we call file, Azure calls it as a blob. So it's a similar term. It's a technical term. Yeah. Any more questions here, guys?
So
What's the
what was
maximum,
that?
sir? 1 second, please. Yes. What's the maximum? Yes. So it can go up to 365, 1 year. You can also go beyond it. We generally don't do that. We maximum take it somewhere around 3 months to just be on a safer side. Okay. Yeah. Someone had a question online. Someone had a question online.
Uh, so I was asking about the dollar logs container. So what is that actually?
Okay. So the dollar log container, right? It's an automatically generated container out here. So whatever happens to your blob, let's say there is, blob again at the end of the day is nothing but a server in the backend on which you're storing data. And a server can have issues. And when you have issues, you need logs to understand what that is. So all these logs will be stored in something known as a dollar log folder out here. As of now, there are no issues. There is nothing that is saved out here. So it's a system generated folder, or it's a system generated container out here. No, it's not operations that are performed on the blob. So all the operations that are performed on the blob will be calculated or will be captured in something known as an activity log. So I'm doing everything in the activity log. Just say your storage account crashes for some reason. So all these crash dumps or all these log files, a backup, like not exactly a backup, but logs. like what happened at that point in time, what can you do, and etc. So this is a system generated. Like whenever you create a container, you'll have a $log folder out here. Like also this is a latest addition. Earlier we do not have this out, so I'm seeing this out from the past 3 months and etc. This $log container, yes. Any like, does it answer your question? Someone asked that online, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Also, one more question. What normally, let's say, a interviewer asks is that what is the maximum amount of data that I can store inside a storage account? What's like the maximum amount of data that I can store inside a storage account? Is that it's 500 terabyte. 500 terabyte of data is something that you can store inside the storage account. You cannot go beyond 500 terabyte. Okay. Again, if I'm creating one storage account, great. What are the maximum storage accounts that I can create in my Azure subscription? Another question is that it depends upon which subscription that you're using. Each and every subscription comes with something known as limits. Let's say in my subscription, I have a limit of 250 per a region. Meaning in East US 2, I have already created one. So I can create more 249 with each and every storage account having 500 terabyte of data. So it depends upon the subscription that you're actually using. I'm using a pay-as-you-go. That's the reason I have a 250. If you're using an enterprise, you may have a 500. If you are using a free trial, the number can be less. So it depends upon something known as the limit. Okay. Any more questions here, guys?
Sir, in case if we make one more container in the same storage account, so will that make another $logs file, or the logs will be captured and appended in the existing one?
It will be appended in the existing one. There's only $1 log container there. So
Mm-hmm.
all the logs in your storage account will be stored in there.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions here, guys?
Sir, apart from this, we'll get any reference document for each topic, sir?
So I would say please refer to docs.microsoft.com. Like I'll give you wherever you need a reading, right? I'll give you a link online. I'll tell you this is the link that you need to use. Okay. If you go to docs.microsoft.com, just come down to something known as an Azure. You have something known as services out here. And one specific service that I'm looking at is something known as a storage, is which comes under something known as a storage out here. And here, do you see all these things like blob storage and everything, right? This is something that I'm looking at, something known as storage. What is storage service and everything? So for, let's say, if I want you all to read something, if something that I feel that you have to read it, I'll share the link to read it. So everything that I'll be telling is from docs.microsoft.com
Okay.
or the Azure documentations, what I'm actually pointing out to. Okay. But the videos, and when you try practically, right, that will itself be sufficient. Because when you try practically on your own, you'll get a lot of errors. And that's when you'll Google things out. You'll see what is that error and etc. And that's when you read things out. That's how you read documentations normally. Even we don't read documentations on a daily basis. When we get an error, we kind of take that error, we understand what the documentation is telling about, what are the forums telling about it, and etc. Okay. Any more questions here before we close the session for today? Okay, and one quick announcement that I have is that we will not be having a class tomorrow. Like I have something tomorrow at the office, so I cannot come down here. But we can have a class on Saturday. Like instead of tomorrow, we can have a class on Saturday the same time. Okay, is everyone comfortable with that, guys? Does anyone have any issues with that? Like normally we do not have classes on Saturdays and Sundays. We have it from Monday to Friday. But just in case I have something on a Friday and cannot make it, then I'll just adjust it on a Saturday. Okay. Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a great day ahead.